Okay, we are on Daf Kuf Lamed Vav 136, and topic today is going to be viable and non-viable babies. And I guess in the olden days, sadly, a lot of infants died when they were very young, within the first few days. We'll see month here. And the question is, a child that is not viable, that is not going to live, what is its status? Is it even considered alive or a nefel? And based on that, whether one can violate Shabbat to do a Brit Milah or not. And related to that will also be animals that are born, and when are they considered viable animals that they will live, and that has a lot of applications regarding shechita and kashrut and tum'ah. And so we'll be comparing the two and learning from each one from the other. Okay, so this is picking up on that concept we saw yesterday, which will become important today as well, that an 8-month-old baby, and this applies to an animal as well, animals like cows also have a 9-month gestation. And so it was believed in those days that a baby born after 8 months or a cow born after 8 months is not going to survive. So that's going to come up. So related to that, we have the following baraita. Tanya, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, כל ששהה 30 יום באדם אינו נפל, שנאמר, ופטויה מבין חודש תפתה. So, regarding a human baby, the pasuk says that a firstborn is redeemed after 30 days, right? That's what we do. So why? Why do we wait 30 days for a pidyon haben? So according to the Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, it's because for the first 30 days, it's called a nefel. It's called, we are still afraid it may be a stillborn. Once it survives 30 days, then it's for sure alive. Everything is good. Okay. Now that's for humans. For animals, shemonat yamim bibhema eno nefel shenemar v'yom hashemini v'hala yedaseh lekorban. An animal cannot be sacrificed on the first 7 days of its life, but rather only on the 8th day. So Rashbag is interpreting that with the same concept, that the first 7 days we worry that it may be a stillborn and therefore not viable. And once the 8th day comes, then we know it's okay. I mean, we can give it another reason, 8th day being like the Berit. Now it's ready to be a korban, to be entered into the Berit. It could have other symbolic significance. All right. But anyway, this is what Rashbag says. Okay. So 30 days, it sounds like he's talking about 30 days for any animal, any human, any baby.
We don't say Shiva, right, for a baby unless they live 30 days?
Exactly. Good. Excellent. Right. This is the source. What we're gonna see today. Right. Very good. We'll have a couple of stories. I mean, sometimes it's very traumatic for parents. We had a case, unfortunately, like that, and the parents kind of wanted to sit shiva, and they don't really want to hear that. Oh, the baby was nothing, was not not considered alive. But maybe it's more traumatic today because it happens rarely. Maybe this was a form of protection back then when it happened more often.
An Evan.
Evan, it's like a stone. Yeah, it's like a stillbirth. Okay, what we're going to see throughout the daf is that what Rashbag says here is going to be combined with the other halacha that an 8-month-old baby is not viable. So that 30 days, if you wait the 30 days, then you kind of know it made it past the ninth, into the 9th month of that would have been the gestation. So these two different, I don't think Rashbag was talking about that originally, but the Talmud is going to combine them together. And actually by combining them, we'll end up limiting what he says, because we're going to see, if you know that it was for sure, it lasted a 9-month gestation, you remember the date of conception, then this would not apply. Okay, so we'll see interesting ways that these laws intertwine. Okay, that's what Rashbag says. That's the whole baraita that we have. It's not clear if he's arguing on someone. Usually when it says Rashbag Omer, the name first, and the word Omer after, that there's usually an opinion beforehand that he's arguing against. If it says Amar Rashbag, then it could just be a standalone statement. So the Talmud is going to say that there is a Rabbanan who does not agree with this and thinks that we consider them viable in this stage. Okay, but that's what he says. So we're going to now ask a question from that regarding Brit Milah in general. If you before 30 days, it's still a safek whether a baby will live or not. So how can we ever make a circumcision on Shabbat on the 8th day? Because if the baby in fact is not viable and it does not require circumcision, and then you cannot violate Shabbat for it, right? And since every baby we're not sure, so we should never be able to do a Brit Milah on Shabbat. That's the question. Formulation is a little crass, but it's just focus on the legal concept that his point he's making is, no, we would do Brit Milah no matter what. If it's a viable baby, it's alive, good. So it requires Brit Milah, and we do Brit Milah on Shabbat. And if it's not viable, then it's just a piece of meat. So what? I'm cutting a piece of meat. It's not a Shabbat violation. And so either way, it would be okay. All right, so based on that, now we go to our 8-month baby question. The Braita we saw yesterday, Safek ben Shiv'ah, Safek ben Shimona, and Mechalin Lavet HaShabbat. Right, if we're not sure if it's a 7th or 8-month baby, we would not perform the Brit Milah on Shabbat because it may not be viable. 8-month baby. Amai, nimhale, imanafshach, imchayhu shapir kamahil, imlav mechatech v'basarhu. We should apply the same logic you just did. If in fact it turned out it's a 7-month baby and it lives the 30 days and it was alive, then good. So we violated Shabbat and we did circumcision. That's okay. And if not, if it turns out it was an 8-month baby and not going to live, so we were just cutting flesh. So there's no problem. So we should perform against that, against this Baraita. How are you going to answer that? Okay, here a really creative answer. Amar mor bered Rabina, ana berab Nachume bar Zechariah targemna. Targem usually means to translate. Well, because translators would also add interpretation. We interpret that we interpret the Baraita to be talking about the following case. And you're right. We should do the Brit Milah. You must do the Brit Milah for that baby that's born the 7th or 8th month. When we say what you can do, that is applying to carrying or making the knife according to the B'Eli Eliezer. If in fact it's a viable baby, then according to the B'Eli Eliezer, you can do all the preparations as well. If it's not, fine, you can do the cutting itself because it's flesh, just flesh, but you can't do the carrying, and that's what this Baraita meant. Okay, not really what the Baraita says exactly, but that's how he's interpreting it. So now, based on this, we would do a Brit Milah on Shabbat in all cases, right? Because even if it's a safek, it would still be okay. All right, now we got to this interesting spot. Amar Abaye ketanaeh. Says perhaps this whole topic is a machloket tanaim. Actually, right now at this point, it sounds like everybody would say you do, in fact, perform Brit Milah in this safek case. But what is its status? This could be related to a machloket tanaim as follows regarding animals. Okay, so if you have a kosher animal, all right, so we all know if you do have a kosher animal, you do proper shechita, so it's kosher to eat, and also it's tahor. Obviously, it's tahor every korban. Otherwise, every korban you bring in the Bet HaMikdash would be tameh, right? So it's tahor to touch. If an animal, kosher animal, dies on its own out in the field, right, and you find this carcass nebela, and it's tameh to the touch. Go ahead, anyone who touches it. Okay, good. Now, what about this case of a ben Shimona? It's born after eight months, and you do shechita on it. So when it says right, so it has to be something that would be viable, and this animal that's 8 months, born after 8 months, is not viable. So when you do shechita on it, it does not make it tahor. It's as if it died on its own, right? Because it's going to die anyway. That's the first opinion, Tanakama. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon omerim shechitato metaharto. No, we do consider it like any other animal that you would do shechita, and then you still can't eat it, but it's tahor to the touch. So that's the braita. Ma'ila b'ha kami palge b'mor savar chayhu or mor savar metu. The second opinion of Rabbi Shimon thinks that it's alive. It's like a live animal, and just like a live animal, if you do shechita, even if it turns out to not be kosher, it's tahor. Whereas the first opinion says it's like it's already dead, and since it's already died, dead animal that dies on its own is tameh. So this would seem to be a machloket tanaim regarding the status of an 8-month-old animal or baby. Similarly, that's what we're thinking, but we reject this. Amar Rava ihachi adima palge le'inyan tumah v'tahara dipalge le'inyan achila. No, if that was really the case, then they should disagree not only regarding whether it's pure or impure, but whether you're allowed to eat it. According to the second opinion that it's tahor, it should also be kosher to eat. But he doesn't think that it's kosher to eat, and so he must not think that it's really a live animal. Everyone thinks that the 8-month-old baby is considered dead, a baby animal. Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon sabre kitrefa, terefa lava fagav demeta hi shechitata metaharata, achiname lashena. They say we consider it like a terefa. Terefa is an animal that's sick. After we kill it, we see that it wasn't going to last a long time. And so in that type of case, when we do shechita, it is tahor to the touch, but it's not kosher. And so this animal, like the 8-month-old baby, is like a terefa case. Still can't eat it, but it's not considered alive. Like a teref is not considered alive, even though it's walking around. Rabbanan la dameli terefa. Terefa etala shata kosher. Hi, lo etala shata kosher. No, terefa is better. Terefa once was well, right? It once was healthy, and so now it became unhealthy. But the shechita is good enough to make it tahor. That won't become tameh. Whereas the 8-month-old baby never was viable, never had a chance at living, and so therefore it's tameh. It's as if it just died like a stillborn, and it's already dead. Okay. Now, so in fact, it's not a machloket tanim. Everyone agrees that's considered dead. Hold on. I could bring you a counterexample of an animal that's born taref, born with a defect in its lungs and was never going to make it. Isn't that then similar to the 8-month? No, even that's not a counterexample, because since there is something similar to it within the species, taref animals, most taref animals first can live. It happens to be this one is taref from birth, still within the category of taref, and so when you do shechita, it's tahor. Whereas this one, 8-month-old baby, no 8-month-old baby can ever live, and therefore, according to that Tanakama, it's tameh. All right. So we at this point resolved that there's actually no machloket tanaim. Everyone thinks that it's considered as if it's already dead. All right. Now we have a question. The question I brought up before when I read that baraita. Mi peligi Rabbanan ale de Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel olo Rashbag, who said this concept that 30 days old, a baby 30 days old, until 30 days old is considered maybe that it's not going to survive. Does everyone agree with that, or is Rabbanan disagree with that? And if there is another opinion, what is the halacha? Like him or like the Rabbanan? So we have 3 proofs. The first 2 we'll reject. The third one we will accept, that there is in fact the Rabbanan. Tashema egel shenolad b'yom tov shochatin oto b'yom tov. Okay, so we have if a calf gives birth on Yom Tov. Now you might think this would be mukseh. It's not mukseh, because you knew it was going to give birth and it was there, so you already had in mind. Actually, the mother, you could eat the mother, right? So it's not mukseh, because you could do shechita. If it didn't give birth, you could do shechita on the mother and eat it. And so the fact that it gave birth, we consider it also not mukseh. So that's no problem. And you can even do shechita right there on that day. look at that. You don't have to wait 8 days. Remember before, Rashbag says, for a human baby, you have to wait 30 days for it to be viable. For an animal, 8 days. So in this case, if it's not viable, or if you're not sure if it's viable, you should have to wait 8 days, because before that, it's like it's already dead and therefore wouldn't be kosher. Yet, this Baraita here says you can kill it on the very day it's born. So doesn't that show that we do not follow Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel? We answer, we reject that. This one could have been talking about a case where we counted how long the gestation was. From the time of conception, it had a complete gestation. It was all full 9 months, and therefore it's not in the category of being premature, and so doesn't fall into Rashbag's category. So this is where it's very interesting, because Rashbag didn't really say anything about an 8-month-old baby, but where this Gemara here is now combining the two and saying if you knew it was a full gestation, then that whole halacha doesn't apply, even according to Rashbag. Okay, next case is similar. Tashema v'shavin shim nolad hu mumo imo shezeh min hamuchan. There's a machloket regarding a bechor. When you bring a bechor, a firstborn animal, you give it to the kohen. If it's a nice animal without blemish, the kohen sacrifices it. If it has a blemish, then the kohen can eat it himself. So this was a problem because sometimes kohanim would look for blemishes, right? Because then they actually benefit from there being a blemish in it. So anyway, there were experts that had to check it out to see if there's a blemish or not. There's a machloket whether you're allowed to look for a blemish on Yom Tov or not, because you didn't have. If it had a blemish, if it didn't have a blemish and you didn't think you were going to eat it, and now all of a sudden it has a blemish, now it might be mukseh. So that's a machloket. However, between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Anyway, that's not related. The point is here that they agree that if it was born with a blemish, so since it was born with a blemish, so it already has the status, we assume that it can be eaten by the kohen, so that's mukhan, it's not mukseh. Okay, so all that's a side point. The main point here is that you can eat it when it's born on Yom Tov, and you do shechita and eat it on the first day. You don't have to wait till the 8th day, right, for it to make sure that it's viable. So doesn't that go against Rabban Shimon Gamliel? We answer the same thing. Here we know it could be a automatic case where we know that it completed its gestation. All right, so that's the rejected also, but now we have a good proof. Tashema damar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shemuel halacha k'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Shemuel says halacha is like his opinion, and you do have to wait 30 days for a human or 7 days for animal for it to be viable. So since he said halacha is like Rashbag, Michalal de Piligeh Shemamina. You wouldn't say halacha is like him if this is the only opinion. Obviously, there is another opinion, and that's Rabbanan. However, even though there is another opinion, and it's even the majority opinion, we follow Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Okay, now regarding this machloket, we want to analyze exactly what type of case would they be talking about. What if the animal or baby dies not from a disease, but dies violently before that period, within the 30 days or within the 8 days for an animal, right? So then what do you assume? You assume that it would have made it, or that it wouldn't have made it. Right? We don't have time. We don't wait it out. So Amar Abaye, nafal min hagag o achalo ari, dibra kol hayhu. So a baby within 30 days falls off a roof, or a lion eats it. And so obviously it died because of what happened, right? Not because it wasn't viable. So in that case, everyone agrees, we assume that it was viable. What the machloket between Rashbag and Rabbanan is if it yawned and died, and so then you see, it must have had some kind of underlying disease, and that's why it died, so it was never alive. Rabbanan say, we still consider it alive, they reject this whole halacha, it's like a regular human being. Whereas Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel thinks that within 30 days, if it dies on its own of a yawn, or then we assume that's as a disease, and it was not viable, never would have made it, is never considered as if it was ever alive, and you wouldn't mourn over it. Okay, well, what's the practical difference? Well, we just said one, mourning, but a more important one is liftor min hayibum. What's the case here? let's say a man dies while his wife was had just given birth. Okay, and so if this baby yawns and dies, and we follow a bunch of Gamliel, or we follow a bunch of Gamliel, then we say, you know what? Even though the man had a baby, the baby was never considered alive, so it's as if he died childless. Therefore, his wife has to do yibum or chalitza. She can't just go get remarried, and she can never marry a kohen, right? Because chalutza is like a divorcee. Whereas if it fell from the roof, right, then we consider it, according to Abaye, we consider it alive, even though it was before 30 days. And therefore, this man, although he died with a child. And although the child died, it's okay. It's not okay. I mean, although the child died, it's still considered as the man had a child. And so she does not have to do yibum or chalitza. So this could actually make a big, important practical difference, what we consider it. All right, now we have a question on Abaye's interpretation. Abaye is interpreting this machloket to be more towards being viable, that even Rashbag would agree that in the case of a violent death, everyone would say before 30 days that it's considered alive. But we have a story here that contradicts that. Would really everyone agree with that? These two rabbis, so these two rabbis went to visit this one rabbi, and he prepared for them a third-born calf. I think we said before, right? The third calf born of a mother is considered the best. It's like the best quality. And it was slaughtered on the 7th day since it was born. After it was born, right? For an animal, it's the 8th day itself is okay according to Rashbag, right? Then 8th day is viable. The first 7 days is not viable. Now we serve them an animal that he killed after 7 days of it being born. And the guest said, they said, thank you for this amazing meal that you prepared, but we will not partake of it. Had you waited until tonight, then it would have been already the 8th day. We would have eaten it, but we will not eat something that is only 7 days old, because we suspect that it might not have been viable. And therefore, it's like just a dead carcass. It's not good. It's not kosher. And they did not eat it. So what's the point? Well, doing shechita on an animal is a kind of a violent death. It's equivalent to a baby falling from the roof, right? If you know it died from the shechita. And so if in fact you think that everyone would agree that a baby that fell from the roof or a lion ate it is viable, and that happens before 30 days, then you should also agree that an animal to which you did shechita before 8 days should be assumed to be viable. Yet in this story, the two rabbis who were guests did not think it was viable. So therefore, Abaye's interpretation does not work with this story. So we have a second possibility. Rather, Abaye, we have to reformulate it. And he says as follows: if the baby yawned and died, everyone agrees that it was never viable to begin with. Okay, and so if it happened within 30 days, even the Rabbanan would consider that that baby dead from like a stillborn. The machloket is when it does have a violent death, more sabar metu, more sabar chayhu. The first opinion, as of Rashbag, thinks that we have to assume that it would have died anyway from a disease, even though it happened to be now a lion ate it. And the Rabbanan say, no, we would assume that it's alive, and it would have made it if not that this violent thing happened. Okay, so that's the reformulation. Now, two stories of people who in fact lost a child before 30 days. Okay, this rabbi had a baby that died within 30 days. And he sat in mourning. Amale Abu Savronita Kabait Lemechal Oh, that's a sharp comment. He says, oh, you want to eat the desserts that they bring to mourners? What do you want, some free food? Because someone's in mourning, the community comes and gives them a meal. His point is, it died within 30 days. You don't have to mourn for it. It was never considered alive. He's assuming halacha is like Rashbag. And well, especially in this case, it seems to have died from on its own, and so perhaps even the Rabbanan would agree. So his point is, it was not considered alive. It was before 30 days. You don't have to mourn, and the fact that you're sitting and mourning, you just look like you're looking for an excuse to get free food from your neighbors. He has an answer. He says, no, I checked the calendar, and in fact, my wife came to full gestation, full 9 months, and therefore we don't have to count the 30 days. We assume that it's alive right there, right from the beginning. And so here again, before we had it with animals, now we have it with people too. If in fact the full term, then the 30-day law does not apply. Similar story, Rav Ashe Rav Kahana. Rav Ashe was visiting Rav Kahana. A bad thing happened to him. Again, baby died before 30 days. We don't even say it. It's like a euphemism. We don't want to say the bad thing that happened. So he saw, right, the host saw that he was mourning, sitting Shiva. Don't you follow? Well, we said, Shemuel said, we follow Rashbag. Before 30 days, it's not alive. Again, the same answer. I know that the gestation was completed, and so I don't have to consider it like an 8-month-old baby. It would have lived, and therefore, yes, I'm doing this on purpose. I am sitting Shiva. Okay. Itemar. So, I mean, all these are, despite the fact that we follow, Shemuel says we follow Rashbag, still, there are lots of exceptions in which we would can still consider it alive. Okay, now what if I have a case as follows? I have something like this. A woman had a child that died within 30 days. And now we're not sure. We got to check into it. Did it die on its own? Did it die violently? What's the case? What was the calendar? And before the Beit Din got a chance to check it out and give her a Pesach halacha, whether she has to do Yibum or Chalitza, or she can go get married, she just went and got married on her own to an outsider, not to a brother. So it depends. If she is married to an Israelite, right, meaning that's her second husband now, then we make her do Chalitza. Right? Go do chalitza with your previous brother-in-law, and then get married again. Okay, because it's no problem. If she's a chalutza, you can still marry an Israelite, and that way we will remove any safek. Because there's a safek if the baby in fact was like a stillborn, then she would have to do chalitza. So we want to remove any safek. However, if the second husband she married was a kohen, then she has a problem, because if we make her do chalitza, then she cannot be with the kohen anymore. She's like a divorcee. So in that case, we leave her alone. We assume that that safek is on her side. We assume that the baby would have lived, and it's okay. It was full term. Everything's all right. And therefore, she had a baby. She does not have to perform a chalitza. So in other words, in the case of doubt, if the consequences don't matter, we'll be machmir. But if the consequences do matter and it's going to make her life more difficult, then we should be lenient. Okay, this is a hugely important precedent. There are many like it, that the rabbis are want to try their best for people to be able to marry whoever they wish, and we want to not put limitations and restrictions as much as possible. And when there is a safek, where there is some way of finding a leniency, the rabbis do want to find a leniency. All right. Anyway, that's a nice story. Okay, not all the rabbis were on the same page about that. Rav Shedavia said, this was said in the name of Rava, by the way, right? Ravina said in the name of Rava this is the lenient opinion that we don't make or break up with the Kohen. Shedevya also said in the name of Ravina, in the name of Rava, says no, both of them, they have to get, even a Kohen, they make her do chalitza, and that's it. She can't even go back and be married to the Kohen. Sorry, it's a safek, I know, but it could be that it's a problem. So safek eshet ish, you can't do it. Safek eshet ish. Safek, a safek of a girusha chalutza, marrying Kohen, we can't allow it. Amar le Ravina, le Rav Shedevya. So these are both students of Rava, right? And so Ravina is the one who said it's allowed. He tells Rav Shedevya, the one who's just said it's not allowed. This is ba'urta amar Ravahachi, the safra haderbe. At night, when we were studying with him, at night he said what you said, he was mahmir, but then he slept on it. And in the morning, he said it's allowed. And so I quoted his last opinion. You weren't paying attention in the morning, you only heard what he said at night. He changed his mind and you're wrong and I'm right. So Maleh Sherituha, Rav Shedevya says back to him, oh, you permitted her to, right, someone who married a Kohen, you permitted her to remain with the Kohen? I hope that may be God's will that you should be able to permit the forbidden fat. In other words, it's sarcastic, right? If you just sleep on it more, then you'll find more kulot to say something that is clearly not kosher is kosher, right? You can't do that. I don't trust you. I don't believe you. This story never happened. In fact, he thinks that Rava said it's not permitted, and I don't know what you're saying that he changed his mind. Okay, so this is a really kind of intense conversation, intense dialogue, each one accusing the other of misquoting their master Rava, with huge consequences for this woman who went on her own and married a Kohen. Okay, so super interesting case and dialogue. All right, now we're just going to go and finish off the discussion of the next part of the Mishnah, where the Yehuda Matir, he said that, right, we said the majority opinion says androgynos, hermaphrodite with both signs, does not do Brit Milah on Shabbat. The Yehuda says you do. We consider this hermaphrodite like a male, and although there's both signs, we consider like a man. They have to do Brit Milah for sure, and they do Brit Milah even on Shabbat. Amar Rav Shizbi, Amar Rav Chisda, lo lakol Amar Rav Yehuda androgynos sacharu. Shemata omer ken barachin ya'arech. This is, although Rabbi Yehuda in this case of Brit Milah considers the baby to be a male, the hermaphrodite to be a male, it's not true for all halachot. For example, arachin. If someone says, I vow to the Bet HaMikdash my value, right, myself, I donate myself to the Bet HaMikdash. He doesn't have to actually go and give himself, but rather we evaluate his worth, his worth as on the slave market, and he has to give that much. That amount, but the amount is different for a male and a female. A male is 50 shekel, and a female is 30 shekel, right? And so it makes a difference. As hermaphrodite says, I donate my value to the Bet HaMikdash. What does he pay? 50 or 30, right? So the answer is he doesn't pay. Actually, he doesn't pay anything. Let's see why. How do we know that Rabbi Yehuda would not consider him a male for the law of arachin? The Tanya Hazachar Velo Tumtum Bandroginos. Pasuk says, I'll show you the pasuk here. Vaya erkecha here. Adam ki afli neder berkecha nefashot. Someone who makes a vow and donates his own worth. Erkecha zachar. If he's a man, 50 shekel. Vim nekeva sheloshim. So since the pasuk says im zachar, if he is a man, if he is a definite male, then it's 50. And this person is not a definite male, so he does not pay 50. Okay, good. Not a tumtum either. Tumtum is someone who's covered over and he doesn't have either. It's not clear either sign. So maybe he's not valued as a man, but maybe he'd be valued as a woman. Pasuk says if she's a female, so she has to be a female, definite female, like the male was a definite male, and he doesn't fit into either category. Since he doesn't fall into either category, he doesn't pay anything. Okay, that's interesting. I would have thought he at least pays the lesser value. He says something or other, right? Okay. Ustam Sifra Rabbi Yehuda. All that was a quote from the Sifra, the Midrash Halacha on the Vayikra, and Stam Sifra is held to be Rabbi Yehuda. And since Rabbi Yehuda is the one that says this, and he thinks that you don't consider the Mephrodite as a male for Arachin, you see that this is Rav Chisda. His statement is true. He's considered a male for Brit Milah, but not for Arachin.